Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to be exploring the value of our NetOps 2023 predictions and how you can capitalize on those as we move throughout the year. And we're going to talk specifically about how no-code network automation can do that. I'm Valerie DiMartino, Director of Product Marketing at NetBrain. And joining me today is Mark Harris, Senior Vice President of Marketing at NetBrain. So we're going to go and explore some of these top trends that are happening today in NetOps. So Mark, we've made it almost to the end of Q1 2023 already. It's hard to believe. It has been unprecedented times, as it has been really for the past 3 years or so. And there's a lot of economic challenges that will require enterprise IT organizations to really start investing in automation if they haven't yet already. So in this discussion, we're going to explore whether organizations are really ready to implement network automation and then what challenges still exist. So as you can see, adoption hasn't really picked up and taken off as much as maybe one would have hoped at this point, but we definitely see it rising in priority and gaining some momentum. So let's take a look at what the outlook is in 2023. We definitely see lots of change still and lots of adjustment, but definitely the economy, the outlook on that is still very cautious. So fundamentally, Mark, what do you think needs to happen for IT organizations to, start to be successful here? That's what we're going to really start talking about. And some of the predictions that you made for 2023 listed here really can benefit from different use cases that are actually already being proven out in enterprises today. So Mark, let's go ahead without further ado and explore some of these top use cases and how lots of different enterprises can reap the benefits of network automation. So according to Gartner, worldwide spending on public cloud services is going to reach about $592 billion this year. And this is primarily due to its elastic and scalable nature, and that the benefits are starting to outweigh the risks. So Mark, do you expect that cloud migration to increase dramatically this year? And more importantly, what will be the implications on network operations as a result?
Well, I think the operations impact of cloud migration is really starting to come to a head at this point. One of the problems that people have had for a number of years is that they've struggled with moving workloads but retaining responsibility as that work migrates. What I mean by that is that for many, many years, as the cloud became so prevalent, the responsibility for what happens within the cloud was always viewed as somebody else's problem. So enterprises, as they move the workloads to the cloud, have always said, well, that's Amazon's problem, or it's Microsoft's problem, or Google's problem. And in fact, what's happening for 23 and beyond is the executive team and the stakeholders are basically going back to the leaders, the IT leaders, and saying, the choices you've made about moving workloads to the cloud really are choices you've made. And with those choices has to come the support plan, the responsibility, the investment, the really all of the attributes of standard NetOps has to exist, even if you've chosen to put those workloads in the cloud. And what that means is that even though the visibility and control has typically decreased when the cloud has been used, you kind of need to regain it. And so for 23, I'm predicting that there's going to be a lot of companies that are looking for the tools and the technology and the discipline, frankly, to dig into their cloud deployments and manage those environments as if they are the traditional infrastructures that people have done for decades.
Yeah, it's really about ownership, and that dovetails nicely into our next prediction, which is accountability. Now people are, accountable for the entire network end to end. One of the things that's been up for debate a little bit has been the ownership, as you were talking about a little bit here, beyond the traditional data center boundaries, which we've been really outside of for a while now. But I think we all agree that it's the network's responsibility to ensure that the infrastructure delivers that high performance, secure, and always on user experience that we all have come to expect with everything being 24/7. Can you talk a little bit about IT leadership's roles and responsibilities when it comes to supporting the business needs?
Sure. Again, the role of IT leadership doesn't really change whether it's cloud or in-house, and even going further, the days and the decades, frankly, of people managing box level health really are going by the wayside as well. When you look at the responsibility for IT organizations, it's really always been to power business applications. That's never really been a question. The problem is there was a translation error between what business leaders said that they needed, which typically was application or user based, and what IT delivered, which typically was packet and technology based. So this alignment between the infrastructure with business, 2023 is going to be the time where we start talking the same vernacular, using the same vernacular, and talking so that we can communicate with one another. Things like SLA, service level agreements. That's really a terminology that's been around for a really long time, but we're going to start using it internally to talk about the delivery of IT services as it relates to the users and applications, rather than this line is up or that router is failing. And so as we go through and look at performance and security and quality and all the other attributes of what the application and business line managers need for the users, it's going to be that level of accountability that says, are you delivering voice over IP at a level that is suitable for my company? I don't care about the boxes or the routers or the switches or the lease lines. What I care about is, are the calls crystal clear? And that type of accountability is going to be paramount as 23 goes on.
Yep. So it really has to be on the shoulders of the subject matter experts and the skilled network engineers that are out there. So that takes us over to these people that operations really depends on. So hiring these people nowadays is becoming harder. It's harder to retain good skilled network engineers. It's harder to retain that network knowledge. And it's harder for people to come in and get up to speed on the network. It takes longer because that knowledge is not saved anywhere or ingrained. And so the tribal knowledge never really gets captured while these people are at that company. And then when they leave, you kind of realize that. So you're essentially forced to start from scratch every time these people leave. So how can IT leaders approach this problem better so that they can leverage people's expertise going forward and maintain that?
Well, interestingly enough, every organization, every enterprise will tell you that they've got the smartest guys on the planet running their networks. They've got guys that know the routers and the switches and the just everything. What they don't have is a way to scale those people, which results in delays and escalations and all kinds of redundancies and repetition of work and basically reinventing the wheel. And so when you look at 23 going on, I'm really predicting that we're going to start taking advantage. The executive team, the leaders are going to start taking advantage of the fact that they already have the answers. They just don't have the scalability of those answers. And when you look at doing that, how do you do it? You have to capture the knowledge, the expertise that your subject matter experts already have, figure out a way to make it, if you will, to encode their knowledge and make it executable, make it shareable so that people just like you in other places and other countries and other times can use it and then be able to scale it across the entire network. And that's really one of the things that comes with sort of the maturity of the IT function. And as the staffing shortages and the skill set alignments and all these things start coming together, people are looking for. So the prediction for 23 is that we're going to start taking advantage of the fact that that knowledge already exists in-house. It's just never been scalable. And when you do scale subject matter expertise, you do things like consistent approaches. The same kind of problem solved in two different places at two different times will get solved the same way. The reduction in human error. All of these kind of things that go with best practices and being able to capture knowledge and expertise and then reuse it across an organization.
Yeah, starting to see what's possible, but it requires sort of a a reimagination of the strategy that has been the traditional approach for so long. So service outages, sort of a painful topic sometimes, when these do happen, they can either be really detrimental, or they can just be sort of that underlying ongoing problem that just kind of nags. And so we've got blackouts, we've got brownouts, but when we have blackouts, it's oftentimes very painful, very newsworthy. But outages that are harder to diagnose is kind of the real pain point almost, because it just happens so frequently and you can't really get a handle on it because you can't figure out why it's happening or where it's happening. And these network engineers are trying to solve outages with manual coding, which doesn't really work right now because the networks are just so complex. It's just very difficult. And they don't have a way to solve a problem once and for all, right? So how can they go about sort of looking at this in a different way?
Well, it's very fundamental. Most IT organizations would tell you that their network operations teams spend most of their time tactically solving problems. So a problem is already manifested, it's starting to hit production, and now you have to respond. Tickets get created, and those tickets have to get resolved. What we realized pretty quickly is that outages take many forms, and you can have complete outages like the old days where data centers would go offline and large amounts of work were corrupted. Or you can have things as simple as service degradations, where instead of 1 million transactions per second, you can handle 700,000, which is still a service degradation and it has an impact to the business. So these kind of changes and these kind of outages or service degradations happen all the time. What you realize pretty quickly is that because they happen all the time, you kind of have to look at, well, what's the impact to the business? What are the hard and soft costs of those outages? Since they do happen all the time, and yes, there's resiliency strategies and all kinds of software healing and things of that nature. So things don't typically go off. They typically turn gray. So that's part of the problem here, is that because things are not off, it hasn't been the highest priority to go off and proactively look at how you can prevent outages. But in fact, that's kind of the holy grail, is how do you prevent an outage before it actually starts manifesting into production? And if you look at the cost of solving a problem before it becomes production, it's actually significantly lower on the front end. And so by looking at how the network should be operating, how the backup lines, link failures, just proactively looking at even things as simple as the memory inside a router. If you start looking at the memory inside a router, you'll see at some point it's going to start decreasing. And before it gets below a certain threshold, maybe it's a good time to take some remediation action and either go to a different router, reboot, come up with some resiliency plan that you have in place so that that decreasing memory doesn't start affecting production. And it turns out you can do the same thing with HA mirroring, all kinds of different situations that can be proactively enforced, detected, and then resolved before users are ever aware that that kind of thing was happening in the back end.
Okay, great. So prevention is all well and good, but we still have to deal with the influx of tickets that we're dealing with right now, with this all the different types of issues, whether they're repetitive or transient, critical issues, non-critical issues. We have to sort through all of this. And it's been just really slugging it through with these, network operations the way it is today. It's been really manual. It's been finding a needle in a haystack very oftentimes. It's been super repetitive. How can we kind of get on top of this issue and start being a little bit more proactive about problems that occur, and maybe not taking the same exact approach to spending as much time solving each and every problem that happens over and over again?
Well, and I think that's exactly it. I've been predicting for a long time that we're going to have to stop reinventing the wheel. And typical network operations is all about having sets of engineers that behave differently at different times in their career, at different times in life, solving the same kind of problems that their neighbors and their peers did, but solving them differently. And that's really a very inefficient model. Every time a problem happens, you basically start from scratch as if you've never seen it before, even though you did, and you basically resolve it once again using whatever kind of brute force method you've used. So by capturing best practices, for 23, we're going to have to learn how to get smarter, how to operate smarter, how to get people more collaborative. And so by bringing people together and capturing their expertise, making it shareable, it's going to it's going to turn into fewer escalations because you don't have to call anybody. You're going to be able to actually just grab something off the shelf, if you will, out of a library and just start using it as if you are the smartest guy on the planet for this kind of problem. When you look at any service ticket today, I'd say 2/3 or more of that service ticket, the resolution of every service ticket, is typically doing the same repetitive remediation, figuring out where the problem is, pinging, poking, trace route, drawing maps, all of the sort of generic triage that goes on. That's probably 2/3 of every service ticket. So by having all of that done for you with some best practice, some known set of steps that you can just blast through that quickly, and then finally get to the problem itself where you have to put your knowledge to work. That's really what this is all about. So for 23, it's going to be all about thinking smarter in the remediation phase rather than just continuously solving the problem over and over and over again and not getting, not taking any less time today than you did 2 years ago or 10 years ago.
Yeah, I just have to get a lot more efficient. It's not productive to do these remedial tasks and these mundane types of things for every single ticket when it could easily be generated for you. So in your blog, you said hybrid cloud and end-to-end visibility is going to reign king in 2023. Mark, is this something that you think will be difficult to find with many of the technologies out there today? And do you think this is foundational for network automation?
Yeah, it's interesting. We've grown up in a world of IT that there are so many stovepipes and so many different camps of technology. So the people that look after the wide area typically are different than the folks that look after the software defined and the various pieces in between. Storage, network attached storage, just every piece has a group of people that look after it. But when you look at it, as I said in the beginning of this webinar, if you look at it from the business perspective, the user experience is really all that matters, the applications and the user experience. And that's really a compilation of all of those technologies working together. So by understanding how it all flows, information flows from the wide area to the local area to the data center, between storage devices and out to servers, east west within a data center. I mean, there's so many different ways that information flows. You can't have visibility, true visibility for the business without having literally an entire picture of the network. So for 23, I've been predicting for a while, but for 23, I see a lot of emphasis on how do I solve the problem with a sort of an uber knowledge, an ultimate knowledge of how information flows. And regardless of which technology it goes into or out of, and whether there's 10 servers or 10,000 servers involved, it really is all about how does the information flow? How does it go in and out of the cloud? And the cloud is just another type of technology, by the way. So this concept of visibility at the stovepipe really is going to be beaten down in 23 and beyond. And we're just going to start looking at information flow, application, user level, how does information flow? And basically looking for a single view, kind of cross technology, regardless of where it comes from and going to.
Right. So going back to sort of the overall sort of way things are done, processes and stuff, why do you think that NetOps has still remained just tactical and reactive in its approach over so many years? And why hasn't it caught up yet with the times, like in other areas, in DevOps and SecOps and some of the other areas which are getting the attention of automation?
Well, IT for many years has been put in place with the big focus on the technology itself, new routers, new switches, technology. And there's always been this little line item, basically attacks. So NetOps has been attacks that you just double the size of the network and the number of routers and switches and that kind of stuff. You just double the size of NetOps. That's always been the way it worked. You didn't really look for efficiencies or economy of scale. In addition, most of that NetOps has been focused on problem solving. So every day they come in, the people come in, they look at the number of reported problems, the number of things that are going on just to keep the lights on and the customers happy. And they don't really spend a lot of time. They don't have the time, frankly, to go off and look at what can I do to make this better going forward. And that's one of the things that for 23, there's a lot of discussions right now about carving out more and more time to start looking for ways of becoming better and better, more efficient. So coming up with if you will, a plan for network operations rather than just a daily routine of reactionary kind of tactics. As you go through the planning process for IT, what you realize is that there are very big things that have changed in the world. The number of people that are available within an organization has changed. The cost structures of keeping your best talent has changed. The number of people that are involved in solving problems and different technologies has increased. So the complexity has also changed. As we go through and look at the tactical versus strategic view of NetOps, I really predict that it's going to become more of a mandate by the executive team and the shareholders and stakeholders to say, come up with a plan rather than just tell me what you've been doing backwards, backward looking, what have you been doing? Because I know how many tickets you've solved, I know how many servers are installed, but what are you doing next year that's going to make that a better discussion and a more, if you will, more strategic discussion than you were doing last year or the year before?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's kind of the year for that to really take over. So security is top of mind for pretty much everybody, I think. Super important. Everybody's trying to make sure that there's lower risk. And on one side of the coin is preventing network attacks by standing up security and firewalls and such. But there's another side, which is being a compensating control and helping to improve a business's security posture. And if we leave off that second part where we look at and then manage the drift in the post-deployment timeframe, are we potentially leaving ourselves at greater risk and of threats on a vast attack surface now?
Yeah, the role of security has become, if you will, number one on everybody's agenda for 22, for 23. Everything is about security today. There's just so many bad actors in the world. And we really focus, our solutions, and my prediction is that when you start looking at confidentiality and availability of data, those are things that are directly related to how the network is operating. And so you should be able to go through and say, I can assure that all of those investments in firewalls, as you mentioned a minute ago, firewalls and other security services and access control, all of those investments are in place. They were the proper investment. They were the proper solution. And by the way, I'm also going to continuously verify that those are doing the job they were intended to do. And so for 23, I'm really predicting that this verification is going to be something that becomes a bigger and bigger focus for large organizations. So continue to spend the money on hardware and software for security, but verify that something hasn't unintendedly, some consequences not unintendedly opened up a firewall port or some sort of a router configuration that's now allowing bad actors to get through it. There are just so many parts and pieces in a security architecture that really need to be verified, and not just once, not just daily, but literally all the time, to make sure that protocols and ports and things like that are protected the way they're supposed to be. If you look at the availability of information, it should be very clear that certain types of information are available, others are not. And you should be able to defend that verification plan. And the same thing with confidentiality. When you look at the information that's being accessed, is it conforming to that environment that you've put together in hardware and software? And can you defend, can you stand up to your shareholders and stakeholders and say, I test this all the time. It's part of my daily routine. We test this hourly. We test this every minute. Whatever the sequence of events is. But there should be a plan, and this is really what the prediction is for 23. Is a verifiable plan that says I'm going to continuously test my security footprints, my architecture, and verify that it's protecting the business the way we think it is. In other words, we don't want a false sense of security. We actually want a real sense of security.
Right, right. Well, if security is at the top of everyone's list this year, then AI or artificial intelligence is probably the #1 buzzword of 2023. Lately, everyone seems to be talking about AIOps as the next big thing to revolutionize automation. It's an industry term coined by Gartner that promises to use artificial intelligence using data to operationalize knowledge. And the end goal is really being able to let IT teams make more accurate decisions and respond to networks and system incidents faster. So, Mark, is this a trend that you see worth exploring, or is it still yet to be proven out? And what are some of the alternatives?
Yeah, and this is kind of a short one because we've covered a little bit of it already. Most organizations will tell you that they don't have to put some sort of a big project in for artificial intelligence to figure out how to solve a network problem. They already know how to do that. They have subject matter experts somewhere in the globe, somewhere in their organization that literally know how to solve every problem that there is. What they don't have is a way of capturing that expertise, that knowledge, so that it becomes shareable. I would argue that the human intelligence, the ability to solve a problem, whether it's some sort of a chassis router or a data center switch or something like that, that knowledge exists, and it's going to be better knowledge than trying to let the current generation of artificial intelligence try to figure out the best way to solve these kind of problems. So leveraging the SME is really what this is all about. And for 23, we don't have to set our sights on AI. 10, 15 years from now, we may be talking about AI as a contributor to the NetOps solution. But today, you already have it. You just don't have the ability to scale it. So when you look at the scalability across an enterprise, it'd be great if you had a subject matter expert for every technology in every location you have, but that luxury doesn't exist. So the response to artificial intelligence and really the prediction for 23 is that there'll continue to be pilots and companies that are dabbling in artificial intelligence, but most of those will not yield the kind of results that just effectively capturing and then sharing and scaling the knowledge that the humans that are already in place already possess.
Yeah. So I think then the key to doing automation sooner rather than later and making it real and proven is no code. And network operators and engineers have been successfully coding network operations for decades, as we know. And then there's Ansible for automating IT, which claims simplicity and ease of use, and that's taken off in the market. But what are some of the limitations today of doing it that way, and why do we need a different way?
Yeah, no code has been one of those topics that has been on the periphery of people's agenda for years and years and years. Gartner would tell you that over the next few years, tens of billions of dollars are going to be spent on no code technology in various ways, shapes, and fashion. I'm a big supporter of no code, and it really allows you to take the concepts, the ideas you have about how to solve problems, and again, without using code, as the name says, without using code, basically capture it so that it can be executed by the machine. That's the simple way of looking at this. And so the prediction is since you have the human expertise and you have the desire to make that human expertise scalable, why not use code? Why not use no code? I'm sorry. Why not use no code? Why not be able to take these folks and say, let's solve a problem once, capture it using no code technology, and then make it available to all your peers. It really enables rapid execution of knowledge in ways that subject matter experts, you'd have to hire hundreds of subject matter experts basically to do the same kind of work as just taking one and capturing it. It also solicits participation from a larger audience. You may have subject matter experts that know security or server ops or data center, wide area. All of these groups, application folks, all of these group of people have great ideas about how their applications need to perform or the kind of conditions that must exist for those applications to give the user experience that they want. With no code, you have the ability to basically capture those ideas and make it a management plane, a control plane for your network. And that's really the important part here, is that no code, although it's an academic idea and it's been talked about for many, many years, you can put it to work today to capture that expertise and make it executable by the machine. And really, bottom line is, no task is too big or too small. You literally can say it'd be great to make sure port 100 is never open. You can capture that using no code and make that executable. But you can have much more complicated ideas as well. And no code is really applicable to both of them.
Great. So those are the predictions. But I think a lot of people are still finding out that they have some questions or some hesitation. People are sort of open to the idea of automation. They're dabbling in it, but they're not really necessarily sure how to get started. We haven't really seen it take off, but we do expect to in the next 2 to 3 years. And we've heard from Gartner, in their 2022 adaptive automation I&O strategy, 2 of 3 respondents report having some high or full automation in their function. And 85% of those that do not have any full automation expect to become more automated over the next couple of years. So what are some of these sort of barriers to adopting automation? Why have so many organizations just been slower to adopt automation, especially on the NetOps side? And should more organizations look at 2023 to take that plunge?
Yeah, the automation within the network world has been sort of a spotty past. Matter of fact, automation across IT and enterprises has been kind of spotty. There's been countless projects that have been put in place, lots of money and long development cycles with many, many engineers that have tried to do automation projects. And they typically underperform and just become so rigid that the value of them is really decreased. So when you look at what's the roadblock of doing this, it's really it starts with just wanting to do this, frankly. Yes, technology in place is complex, but you automate the things that you need to automate. So when you look at the tasks that need to be done individually, each one of those is not that complicated. It's when you're trying to look at the whole picture and automate, and if you will, boil the entire ocean, that's where the complexity comes in. So the rule to the wise is automate the things that you need to automate, the pieces that you can put your hands around. And the concept, you have a note there that says it's unproven. In these big projects, in these big environments where you're putting 1,000 developers in place to automate, it is unproven, because all of that work will go in and you'll have many, many people working together for long periods of time, and then the results are basically not there. So there's been a long legacy of failed automation projects that have cost a lot of money. They typically only focus on a few deployment kind of things. So initial setup of equipment, provisioning, that type of thing. They run into roadblocks around vendor support and applicability across different model numbers. So there's just so many different caveats about why automation has failed in the past. The good news is, as you go forward, there is no lack of intelligence when it comes to automation. And if you throw no code at it, if you look at no code as a way of capturing intelligence, which can solve similar problems, it's really just a way of putting knowledge to work in little bite-sized pieces. And that's what this is all about. The roadblocks typically come when you're trying to boil the ocean with large development cycles. But if you take it a step at a time, you can actually start automating the most important things, the use cases that are most dear to yourself, literally in days or weeks, not years or longer.
And I just wanted to reinforce what we were just saying there with Deloitte's take on, barriers to scaling intelligent automation. I thought this was pretty interesting. as far as what they think, and it's a lot of kind of the same things that you're saying. So it really kind of backs that notion up.
Yeah.
So yeah, so
What
in
what
my just yeah,
what
go
I was
ahead.
going to say on the last slide, one of the ones
Yeah,
that's worth noting is the resistance to change. I think that is one of
yeah,
the most telling one, is that we're very comfortable working through details of how to do things very tactically, hands-on, brute force. And we like to do that. That's what we've all grown up on. So there's a lot of resistance to change. And over the years, it's gone, higher and lower. But things like the resistance to change, the lack of clear vision about what you're going to do with it, those are all really important parts of the process as you're going to go forward with network automation.
right, right. Yeah, definitely a lot to consider, but if you take it kind of one step at a time and break it down, it's not really um, that much of a hurdle to try and get started.
Exactly.
And um, in my discussions with Gartner, they're really advising people to have clear goals before they go ahead and jump into it, have a business case and then attack that business case. So, Mark, in your opinion, what's the most important advice that you have for leaders in 2023 in IT?
Again, we've looked at all the problems that thousands of customers of ours have, and we kind of put it into a couple of different buckets, a handful of buckets. Outage prevention is always something that's number one on people's priority list. If you can go through and say, I have a priority to make sure that fewer outages happen this year than they did last year. What that means is that you proactively have a plan that says, I'm going to figure out how the network should operate, and I'm just going to continuously look for those conditions to exist. And then if they start deteriorating, or if those conditions fail to happen, I'm going to then take action to restore them. In the case of change management, there are so many change management solutions in the market, but when I look at 23 and beyond, what we find is that the change management solutions focus on the box themselves, on the device health, on making a change to a device. What they don't focus on is the business. And that device may have unintended consequences if you make a change on applications and user experience if you're not aware of how the network itself is delivering services. So change management, coming up with a better way of change management, which is based on the knowledge of applications and user experience, is a critically important factor going forward. And automation can help dramatically with. Automated diagnostics, as we mentioned a little while ago, being able to reduce the first 2/3 of every service ticket and make it executable by machine. That's a perfect use case for network automation. When you think about the number of use cases across the board, there can be what appears to be hundreds of them, but the reality is these are the kind of 5 use cases that we see all the time. Automated diagnostics solves hundreds and thousands of tickets each month if you wanted to. Application performance. People are always reporting slow applications. That's another use case where you can constantly look at a network and say, is it behaving the way I intend it to behave for my voice over IP, or for my web backup, or my east-west traffic in the data center? And by constantly looking at the network's performance, latency, security, all those types of things, you can basically go through and say, I'm going to get in front of this thing. And then lastly, why no code automation? For security enforcement. That's first and foremost on everybody's mind right now. And by using automation, you can go through and check all the hundreds and thousands of conditions that you expect to be, that your firewalls and other hardware and software for security are put in place for, and making sure that it's operating the way it is. So those 5 use cases really are sort of the lion's share of what our customers are telling us. And as you go forward looking for network automation, those are the kind of low-hanging fruit that you would want to approach network automation and say, I'm going to go solve my change management issues. We make changes all the time, and yet we have problems after the change that have to get resolved. And that's what rollbacks and things are all about, where you made a change and then you had to revert because something else happened unintended. But yeah, these five use cases are a great place to start. And for 23, I would expect that people are going to be looking for the early wins, the way of putting automation in place that yields immediate and direct results.
Great. Thank you. Very insightful, Mark. So I invite all of you to come to our website to come and drill down into these use cases, whichever ones really resonate with your organization and the challenges you're experiencing. Read about it, talk to us, take a guided tour. We have a lot more resources for you to explore and continue learning more about this topic. So thank you so much for your time and attention today. At this point, I think we have a few minutes where we're going to stay on and take some Q&A. And great having you. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your day. Great. Thank you guys for staying on. If you do have a question, please go ahead and put it in the question panel now, and we'll go ahead and take that. I do have a couple of questions, Mark, that came in, if you don't mind answering.
Sure.
First question is do I have to put agents on my PCs, or how does this get installed?
Actually, it's a good question. We don't require any agents or any technology, any foreign technology at all. We use all the native interfaces, all of your routers and your switches and your command line, your APIs, whatever the native interface is to, whether it's the cloud or a piece of traditional equipment in a data center, we just use the standard interfaces and go all the way from the edge all the way up to the cloud.
Great. Another question that's come in is if we have a free trial of NetBrain for people to sort of just try it out on their own.
Sure, you can come to our website. There's both online demonstrations, a test drive system, a sandbox. We'll be happy to come to you. We can do it over the web. We can do it using the cloud. There's lots and lots of different ways to get the experience of NetBrain at your site and to see what it would do for you. Great. And we have one more question, and then I'll check and see if others have come in. It's really around how to get started. Does the person have to create all the automation from scratch, or how does that get initiated? And actually, that's one of my favorite questions because anytime you have these what traditionally have been big projects, people are thinking, well, I don't really want a blank canvas and a bunch of paint. I want something to get me started. So what NetBrain has done, especially with the no-code technology that we've been talking about for a number of years, we've allowed you to capture ideas, and then because frankly, because we're very clever, we allow you to essentially abstract those ideas and make them applicable across the network. So while you may be saying, let me go make sure that a pair of an HA pair, the configurations are mirrored, the reality is almost every pair of HAs, whether it's a firewall or a router or whatever, you want to match the configurations. So what starts with a single idea essentially gets replicated, you capture it and then you replicate it, and then the system itself executes it at scale. In addition, out of the box, we provide you probably in the neighborhood of 60 or so of the most common automation solutions that we've seen with our customers. We've got 2,500 customers. We've been doing this for a very long time. So if we look at all the problems that we've solved with them, automation really gets applied to dozens of kinds of problems. A lot of people will think, well, I must have thousands and thousands of different kinds of problems throughout the day. It turns out that you don't. You've got dozens, maybe 50 problems that get repeated hundreds of times every day in a large enterprise. And I think that's the magic of doing no-code automation with NetBrain, is that we've abstracted all of this automation so that you can come up with an idea, replicate it at the abstract level, and then apply it across hundreds or thousands of devices that have similar kind of constraints. Okay. We do have one technical question we may have to take offline. It's around Terraform for NetBrain. Is it available for infrastructure as a code to deploy NetBrain and to use Lucidchart? I'm sorry, say that question again. Terraform for NetBrain. Is it available for infrastructure as a code to deploy NetBrain and use Lucidchart? Well, NetBrain will manage essentially any backend. So I'm not familiar with the application specifically, but anything that requires the network underneath to be managed, to be delivering performance, to have a certain amount of throughput, latency, connectivity, security profiles, NetBrain can be used to manage the underlying foundation for anything above. Great.
Okay, any other questions? I think that's all I see in the question panel. So really appreciate everyone staying on and listening, and hope you come to our website and explore and take a guided tour.